We have a guest joining us, Sergei Tsekhotsky, Armed Forces of Ukraine. Sergei, hello and glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.
Well then, let's talk about the destruction of such air defense systems. Let's start with that. As the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Mr. Malyuk himself said, let's admit that the Russian Federation does have air defense systems and they are strong. But as practice has shown, Ukrainian drones and Ukrainian missiles are capable of overcoming that strength. What's your assessment?
Well, if we rate it on a 10-point scale, then it's definitely an 8. That's it. Since we are critical of ourselves, as we should be, we must constantly grow. We need to keep increasing the effectiveness of our strikes. That's it. Basically, that's the direction things are heading. That's it. And the deployment of Oreshniki in Belarus, well, I still see it as Putin trying to persuade his accomplice, the so-called fake president of Belarus, Lukashenko, to take a more direct and significantly active part in this war. And that's one aspect. The second aspect is to intimidate Western countries so that he has more so-called trump cards during negotiations. The blows being dealt to the enemy today on their own territory show that all this time, all these years, it hasn't been in vain. I mean it. Especially during the years of the full-scale invasion, which will soon be 4 years, we haven't wasted our time. We have grown, we have improved, we have increased our capabilities. And today, these capabilities are being put to use. Therefore, Russians need to think and do something at home, on their own territory with their own political leadership, otherwise there will be trouble.
On the other hand, Sergei, how is it now? Overall, does Ukraine currently have the capability to carry out missile and other types of attacks deep inside the Russian Federation? In your opinion, how much does this undermine Russian logistics?
Logistics have been severely undermined, according to all the available information sources. That fuel boom that had already started is now gone. In the regions, it's completely absent. People are dissatisfied, and the Tsar is afraid precisely when the people revolt. This is very bad. So, as we can see, what Putin is protecting today, where his main levers are, is this air defense system, which is deployed around Moscow and St. Petersburg. The rest of Russia's territory is, let's say, exposed today. And considering our capabilities, let's say, in the development of UAVs of various modifications, plus the missiles that Ukraine already possesses, and these rates are increasing, our potential is growing. And that's why Ukraine is not letting up at all. And we have no intention of doing so, not until the enemy stops and the enemy goes home. That's the only thing that can save them and their infrastructure, as of today. Because no one, absolutely no one, is ever going to be able to forgive or forget what they have done, what they have committed over all these long and painful years on the territory of Ukraine. It simply cannot be, it is simply not possible that innocent people are dying, losing their lives, just because some president or a so-called leader or the head of some racist, oppressive entity simply wanted it to happen, simply decided it should be so. That's exactly what they can and should be called today. There used to be fascists, now there are racists. The same behavior on the battlefield, various methods of warfare, the use of torture as a means of coercion or punishment, systematic destruction of dissenters and those who oppose the prevailing power, and so on, continue to occur. History can't keep stepping on the same rake over and over again. Such leaders, dictators, emerge, and they must be immediately, so that they can be removed in a peaceful way, an easy way, by negotiating and depriving them of their leadership, and not allow negotiations to be crossed, as has happened for many years. The G8, guests coming to visit him everywhere, he travels all over the world and so on. And at the same time, even then, he was already killing his own citizens, killing them. Those sacks of sugar they found in Ryazan and so on. Nordost, Beslan. I'm not even mentioning the 2 wars going on right now. The ones Russia started when people simply decided to live separately and develop their own republic based on national, historical, and other grounds. Everyone let that slide. Everyone agreed to it. What did they call it? They called it fighting terrorism on their part, you see. But when people in Ukraine started saying that we are Ukraine, we want our own native language, and so on, even though no one here was really oppressing Russian anywhere, songs, movies, and everything else, all of that existed. But under the fabricated pretext that Russians were being mistreated in Ukraine, he decided, so to speak, under this so-called pretext, to launch the special military operation. And the people, Russians, fell for it and started to support him strongly, so to speak. Well, it's time to think and stop.
Russian troops are striking at Ukraine's energy infrastructure facilities in response to the armed forces of Ukraine. They are carrying out mirror strikes, which are becoming increasingly effective. This was reported on our broadcast by the spokesperson of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, Sergei Tsekhotsky. He noted that Ukraine's operations are aimed at weakening Russia's military potential and its ability to wage war. Let's listen to the direct speech and discuss.
The energy noose around the capital of the Moscow Ulus is slowly tightening. Of course, we want it to happen faster. Of course, we want it to be more. But nevertheless, this is strikes on finances are strikes on the energy component of the Russian Federation, because we understand perfectly well that no matter how powerful or weak it may be, the military-industrial complex of the Russian Federation, nevertheless, is highly dependent, just like everywhere else, on the so-called switch. If it's turned off, then the assembly lines will stop and shells won't be produced. That's just to explain it in simple terms, as they say.
In your opinion, for stronger pressure? On Putin's war, what is necessary if we're talking about long-range strikes?
More missiles, more drones. That will be the best kind of pressure. And accordingly, programs like yours, your channel, it should be heard more and more in all the distant villages and settlements of this Russian Federation. They really need to hear this. They have always been brainwashed. We didn't pay attention to this before. I mean, before the war, somehow everyone just brushed off these outbursts from their Nazis, Russian Nazis. Nazis, that's the only way to call them. When they bullied absolutely every single person they possibly could, like the people from Central Asia, who came to them, they would, well, even on comedy shows, they would make jokes about them, calling them things like Cherky and so on. I apologize for the slang because we have a completely different attitude toward people of different nationalities. On a human level, there are good people and there are bad people. That's all there is to it, really. And as for a whole nation being bad, well, maybe only racist, if you can even call that a nation. I'll say this, we are building up our potential. There's no need to say exactly what we're doing. Sometimes those responsible, if they see fit, announce things about creating rockets, launches, and so on. But the most important thing is to see the results. Let me be clear. Day and night, without weekends, production is running and ramping up. And our potential is increasing. And all of this together is producing results, and in the future, it will yield even more. Because more and more people are realizing the need to take part in this. That's what needs to be understood. We need to stir things up, including our civil society, which today is in some ways not yet involved, as well as our international partners, who also, they shouldn't wait until, God forbid, Putin decides to take some action against the Baltic countries, Europe, Poland, and so on. This must not be allowed because his state is that he's cornered. He understands that he started something he shouldn't have. He started without really assessing the situation. He was deceived by those over there. His accomplices who told him all sorts of things, good things that he wanted to hear. This is the result. Well, and we have shown the whole world and stand our ground that we will not give up Ukraine. And Ukraine was and will remain independent. This is our right, this is our potential, this is our history, and we want to develop it precisely in the spirit of an independent Ukraine, a democratic independent Ukraine.